This is a check-in from beautiful Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. Will a two-loss team make the playoff? Will a two-loss team win it all? Almost certainly, multiple two-loss teams will make the playoff. I don't see any way mathematically or logically how a two-loss team doesn't make the playoff. The better question would have been, will a three-loss team make the playoff? Because I think we got multiple two-loss teams in this thing. Now, the whole three-loss team, that's another conversation. I could have that debate right now, but no one asked me that. So, wink, wink, someone should ask me that. Jesse, if you want to ask me that. But no one's asked me that. So, will a two-loss team make it? Yeah. Think about what I just talked about. Will a two-loss team win the whole thing? Well, that wouldn't be my prediction. No one's ever going to enter a season unless they're just in it for the chaos. No one's going to walk in the middle of August and say, I got a prediction. I predict that Texas loses to Georgia and Texas loses to Oklahoma, but Texas wins the national championship. Because if you think Texas is good enough to win the national title, you're thinking to yourself, they'll be good enough to lose no more than one game. Now, that doesn't mean that's the way it plays out. We know that. We know even in the BCS era, back in 2007, a two-loss team in the BCS era won the whole thing. LSU had 2 losses that year. They won the whole thing. So in a 2-team playoff, we had a two-loss team win it all. So certainly in a 12-team format, it can happen. I am going to go back once more. I'm going to go to the well once more, and I'm just going to caution anyone because I don't want you to be upset. The last thing I want you guys around Christmas and New Year's is upset. So we're here on the front end to deal some truth so that on the back end, we don't have wailing and gnashing of teeth come January because someone sold you on Cinderella. You want Cinderella, the movie theater is where you need to be. College football is not where you need to be. The last shot, believe it or not, as illogical as this sounds, the last shot you had at a Cinderella just disappeared with the 4-team playoff. Well, that's crazy, Josh. The same teams kept winning it every year. I know. I didn't tell you the 4-team playoff gave you a Cinderella. Truth be told, it was highly unlikely with a 4-team playoff, but it was possible. It was possible. Technically, Cincinnati, if they ugly that game up against Alabama a few years back in the playoff, because remember, Cincy was in the playoff, if they ugly that game up, Bama turns it over 3 or 4 times, kind of like Michigan did against TCU. Like, if they do that, they could get to the national title game, and who knows, one game situation, anything could happen. TCU got to the national title game. That stuff's never happening in a 12-team format. So the reason I mentioned that, even though that wasn't the question wasn't about Cinderellas. The reason I mentioned that is because when people think of 2-loss teams, correct me if I'm wrong, I think a lot of you are imagining some Cinderella run. That's fun to think about. It's fun to think. I was a child at one point too. I was immersed in 90s, early 2000s Disney, Nickelodeon culture. I get it, guys. I understand. It's fun to think in cartoon mode. But college football is not played that way. This is real life. There are consequences. There's heartbreak. There's tears. There's pain. And you will have that if that's what you expect. Much more likely than the 2-loss Cinderella is 2-loss Alabama, is 2-loss Ohio State in any given year. I don't expect that this year, but any given year. Oregon, some team that's supposed to be good at the beginning of the year. If you're looking at this little slider, I got a little slider in front of me here, and it's got the over-under win totals for teams this year. Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Oregon, Notre Dame, they all have over-under win totals of 10.5. That means if they go under, 10 wins is right there. Like, it's a possibility for Oregon to only win 10 games, for Ohio State, for Texas to only win 10 games. I predicted Georgia to go 10-2 the other night. Everyone thought that's crazy. It's not crazy. Their over-under win total is 10.5. Like, that's the closest under that you could get to their total. Georgia could do that. They could go 10-2 and then make the playoff and possibly be favored. Because Georgia would be favored against everyone in the country right now. Think about this. If we go to the FanDuel, if we go to their odds makers, which we do, and we asked them, give us Georgia against anyone on a neutral field, they would tell us Georgia would be favored against anyone on a neutral field. Let's say Georgia goes to Texas and loses by a field goal in overtime. Let's say they lose at Bama by 1 point with a minute to go. Bama kicks a go-ahead field goal. So Georgia loses 24-23 in Tuscaloosa. They lose 30-27 in Austin. Nothing about those two results would change the mind of odds makers that Georgia is, power rating-wise, the best team in the country. They lost on the road really close to two really good teams. The point spreads on those games already would have been tight. So my point there is you could have a two-loss Georgia that doesn't even play for the SEC title game, by the way, that gets in the playoff, and they end up favored against every team they play. That's your Cinderella. That's your team that could make a run. Think about the Saban teams in years past. Everyone looks at how many titles they won. Well, I look at how close they came to winning several more. The only thing that kept them from having a real shot to put more trophies on the trophy case is there was only a 4-team playoff. That's actually what kept them out. The more casual-minded person, it's not their fault. They're dreaming. They dream about this 12-team format opening things up. And it does open it up technically in that we'll have more teams at the playoff table. But what it ultimately does is it thins out the herd. And it just takes more of the big boys and makes sure more of them are there at the end of the day. So instead of having a couple of the big boys, you'll have 3, 4, 5 of them with a shot. And if that's the goal we were trying to accomplish, that's wonderful. I'm not even telling you it's a bad thing. I'll be there front and center. The shows will be great. The playoff product will be entertaining. I've always said that. I have always maintained that. It's just that I want everyone to be clear about what we're getting here. That's all I'm saying. I want us to be clear. All right, let's move it right along.